Welcome everybody to the American Space Museum. I'm Mark Marquette and we're glad you're with us on this special Stay Curious edition. We've got with us a great guest and a terrific volunteer at our American Space Museum, a man who was in the delivery room at the birth of the space age, Mac McDaniel. Welcome, Mac, to Stay Curious.
Thank you.
Well, we're glad that you're here. Tell us a little bit about yourself first. We're going to get into his career and talk about some of these instruments in our Cape Canaveral room gallery at the American Space Museum that he's got a lot to do with. But tell us a little about where you grew up and how you ended up here.
Well, I was working for the telephone company out in New Mexico in 1959, and they were searching for technicians for the missile range out here. RCA was taking interviews all over the country, and I went and took a test, and they offered me a job down here and says come on down and we'll put you to work doing something. Well, I got out here and started up. That pretty much covers how I got from there to here. I did bring my family, wife and 4 kids down here in a U-Haul trailer.
What kind of vehicle were you driving in 1959?
No, that was in 59. I was driving a 56 Chevrolet, pulling the U-Haul trailer that was loaded to the limit.
Yeah.
But anyway, we made it down here and got settled in, and things have gone very well for us over the years.
Well, Mac's a terrific guy, and obviously I'm very COVID safe around this gentleman who, you told me you're 87 years old.
That's correct.
And boy, he really gets around for his age. And Marty, my wonderful cameraman and co-producer, is so happy to have somebody older than him in the room. Okay. But Mac is a real treasure at our museum. If you've ever been in our Canaveral gallery, it's the recreation of the launch pads out there. And he's going to tell us a little bit about the history of that and us acquiring this Mod 4 sequencer that's the only one in the world left in existence that tied in all of these parts of launching a rocket into one. And then we're going to launch a rocket for you at the end. But Mac, tell us a little bit about this is the beginning. We're just started launching the Explorer satellites and Juno, and they're thinking about putting Mercury up in space. They announced them in '59 when you came here. How exciting was that, Mac, to be part of that?
Well, it really was. My first day on the job was quite a surprise. They scheduled 4 missile launches in one day.
Holy mackerel.
Launches. That's the only day in the history of the Cape that they ever did that.
On your first day on the job?
First day on the job. I didn't know what I was getting into. They launched a Thor at about 6 in the morning. I was at a roadblock having to wait to get to work. Later on in the day, they had their first Titan launch off of Complex 19. It blew up on the pad, so I got quite a show there.
Whew.
Later in the day, they had an Atlas that was scheduled to go. It scrubbed. And on our second shift, they launched a Polaris, which is the Navy submarine missiles. They were trying to get ready for the submarines. So that was quite a day to start with, yes.
Holy mackerel, I'd say. Well, you're going to first tell us a little bit about where your job entailed, not just of tracking these rockets, not just launching them, but tracking them down what we call the Eastern Range. And Marty's going to move into a little map that we have over there. If you wanted to take your pointer, Mac, and talk about that. This is once again, the consoles you see in the back were really used in launches for over 20 years, the last time in 1986. So the launches you see today, think about how they're run on a smart tablet. This whole room's probably on a smart tablet. But tell us a little bit about launching a rocket and tracking it, Mac.
Well, I'd like to talk a little bit about the missile range itself. This was started in 1954. They contracted Pan American World Airways, excuse me, to operate the missile range for the Air Force, and Pan Am subcontracted the electronics portion of it to RCA. Now, all this included everything to make the missile range work, except mainly it was to support all the missile contractors, all the people that were firing missiles. And they set up this missile range. This included all the tracking stations, all the way from Cape Canaveral down to Ascension Island, which is about 5,000 miles. And there was a lot of them that had telemetry and radar and anything else that was needed to support these launches. That pretty much covers the setup of the initial missile range.
Okay. And I find it interesting that you got companies like Pan Am, Westinghouse. What's the one begin with an F? Federal. Thank you, Marty. Kind of obscure. I mean, they've gone on to do other things. They're not known for their contribution to the early space program, but they were, because they were the technicians. You know, back in your day when you came here, I've had some guests here that I was just talking about today that said if you could, if you could, in 1950s, if you could repair a jukebox, a TV, a radio, or a pinball machine, NASA wanted you. Now tell us why.
Well, most of the equipment then was electromechanical. And being electromechanical, you had a lot of stepping switches and relays, and so
show us that behind you there, Mac. Punch that step.
This is one of the stepping switches here that a spare that actually operates this piece of equipment, and it can step once a second, and that would be changing your units a second as it's counting down.
So you were telling us that those type of pinball machines and jukeboxes had these kind of motors.
Well, they had similar to that, but they were much poorer quality, of course. They would wear out right away.
Well, but people with those type of skill sets, that's what's in the rockets, right? And not necessarily the rockets too, but the equipment in our room here that makes it all happen. All right. Well, tell us a little bit about the timing and firing. All right. You came in as a firing guy, but talk about that job of being a timing and firing engineer, or whatever you called yourselves.
When I came to work, they said RCA does not fire any missiles. Says you do not fire them. And then when they come around to tell me what unit I was going to, they said you're going to firing. Well, what they were saying is that this equipment here was used basically as the link between the missile range and the missile contractor, because the missile range insisted that they have hold fire capability to be able to prevent any firing if there was a problem, and the range safety also had to have hold fire capability, and they everybody wanted to see a countdown. That you see the display. So this equipment was designed for the missile range, and there was one of these, mostly older models than this one, were in each launch complex blockhouse, and they were used for countdown, hold fire capability, and also mainly to run the film cameras that were all around the pad. They had film cameras all around the pad taking high-speed movie pictures of every launch, so if there was a problem, they'd get a good view. They could play them back, and it'd give them very high resolution. Back then, television, black and white television, wasn't good enough to give them the kind of resolution they needed. And it also was built in automatic functions, so that if the missile contractor wanted to use this equipment, it was available to send functions to the pad and even to the missile if they wanted it at a particular time. Now this one will give you any time you want, on and off, or however they want to set it up, from minus 90 minutes down to 0. And actually into plus time. But they could send those out, and then they had the automatic hold fires built into this also, in case they wanted to monitor a particular thing on the missile, that if it went no-go, it would stop automatically if this was set up to control it. Of quite often these automatic hold fires were used for that. Now, in many cases, the missile contractor said no, he did not want to use that part of it. So he would only have the hold fire control and they would run the cameras. The rest of it, they would have their own sequencer. Most of them run from 32 seconds on down that would stop and start all their missile functions.
Mm-hmm. Well, Mac, this is fascinating. I'm going to share with our viewers here, social distance here from Mac, take my off a little bit. Our cheat sheet over here is docents in this room. Says there were 23 sequencers built between 1954 and 1960, models 1, 2, 3, and 4. This is a Mod 4 sequencer built in 1960. The sequencer was installed in the blockhouses of every launch complex to generate the visual countdown display, in caps, the VCD. Oh, that's what you call that, the visual countdown display. That's a VCD. You told me you were kind of excited when you saw that for the first time.
Well, 57 was the first time I saw it, 56.
Of course, every alarm clock in the world ever built's got that in microwaves. So
Yeah.
really, but it was like a poof.
But that's not LEDs, those are light bulbs.
Okay.
Those are miniature light bulbs and they burn out quite often.
You just replaced them the other day, yeah.
We had these all over the Cape, and half our time seemed like was spent changing light bulbs.
Oh, really? On the did you call them VCDs?
We just called them countdown display.
And other nasty words because you were constantly changing out the bulbs,
Yes,
huh?
sometimes.
Okay, the sequencers provided 28 years of exceptional reliability on all Cape missile launches until 1985.
Well, that's correct. In
And-
1984, they come up with a new model of this. They called the Mod 5.
And that's to your right there, isn't
We
it?
have one of those here. It is a computerized version, and it was used from 85 for about 30 years.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes, these were. But
Okay. Well, here's
replaced these.
Now, this is a relic, a space-age relic of history like none other, and Mac will elaborate that on a minute. We have a nice little display up here showing a picture of you and some of your historical equipment.
Well, this is other guys that worked with us out there.
Right, okay. And you were called sequence technicians.
Well, they referred to us as operators. We kind of thought we ought to be called technicians because we did a lot of technician work, but we was called sequencer operators.
Okay. And this sequencer, I'm going to read from our list here. This Mod 4 sequencer was designed and built by Milgo, M-I-L-G-O, Milgo Corp. in 1960, primarily for the Minuteman missile, and installed in blockhouses 31 and 32. This type sequencer was used on the Complex 34 for the first Saturn I launches. This sequencer was last used at Complex 16 to support Pershing missile launches. A nuclear arms agreement with Russia allowed the U.S. to keep this test site. That saved this sequencer from being demolished. It was not used after 1988. The Air Force donated the sequencer to the American Space Museum's Foundation, the U.S. Space Walk of Fame, in 2012. And you and your buddies had a lot of restoration work to do on it, right?
Well, yes, we did.
Pardon me? Oh, yeah, let's see. Point the stick there where you're at there.
Right here?
Yep. He's on the
Right
far
there.
right
Yeah,
there.
right there, yes. Those other people have all worked this equipment.
Good.
How this picture came about, we got a tour of the Cape in 2009, I believe it was. And I'd heard that this sequencer was still in
Go
existence.
ahead and pan out.
So they took us out there and we found, sure as the world, this sequencer was still sitting there on the first floor of Blockhouse 16. And it had no humidity control or nothing. It had been sitting there from 88 through 2009 at that time. And so we started right away trying to get the Air Force to donate it to a museum. Well, it took us 3 years, I guess, from 2009 to 2012 before the Air Force finally agreed, okay, they would give this museum, this sequencer to the museum here in Titusville. Kind of an interesting story on this, when they finally okayed to get it here, they called and told us to come get it. Well, I was out of state at the time. So two of our people, Murphy and one other fellow, went to the blockhouse with some help, dismantled this thing, tore it down, and physically drug it out to a pickup, put it in the pickup, and hauled it to Titusville and put it in my garage.
That sounds like Murphy Boardman.
Yeah, Murphy. And anyway.
And did he call you even to let you know it was there?
Well, yes, I had communications with them, of course.
Okay.
But they had never worked on them, so we had a few problems getting it out there. But after he got there, I found out this lower power supply would not operate. I couldn't make it work. So I was concerned if we could make it work. I got me 2 car batteries set in the back of this and hooked them together and hooked it up to this to give it 24 volts of power. And it fired up and worked, actually operated. And I says, holy smoke.
Oh, wow.
I'm surprised. But anyway, after I did that, I finally got the power supply working, and we got it cleaned up. It is mildewed, molded, rusted, corroded, and a little bit of everything in there. But we cleaned it up pretty well and got it where it would work, and we brought it down to the museum at our last location.
Uh-huh, on Broad.
And it sat there for a year or so before we moved it over here. But
Just tell people out there
basically,
how rare this is.
Well, basically, let's tell you a little bit about this. It's an electromechanical computer.
Should I show this now?
Well, we can.
Okay.
This patch board here is where you program it. This is the way you would program this old computer. These cords will be set to whatever time you want something to happen.
So these are just not arbitrary. This is all figured out to
Yes.
launch a Pershing missile or
Well, now this can support any missile launch. See, these were designed to work on any requirement.
Uh-huh. Go ahead and
And
face it.
they,
yes.
they had different, every launch had different requirements. Some of them wanted a lot of missile functions, and they would use a lot of automatic hold fires and a lot of functions. And some of them just had very few. But this thing, you put these patches in here, and it would program up everything. What you'd get a requirement sheet, you'd set it up with patches to match this.
I had told you, Mac, I have seen this in a book on rocketry, and in my docent tour, I can't resist but saying, have you ever watched Andy Griffith? And Andy's trying to get a hold of Barney, and he says, Sarah, get me, Barney, and she's plugging in that's what's going on here, right?
Well, you're talking about an old telephone keyboard.
Yeah, but I equate
operating.
that to people that have no clue about electronics there. Is that too crude?
Well, I don't know. It might.
Can we open that? Oh, you got the key.
I've got the key.
Hey, he's got the key to it. All right.
Well, there's a few things laying in there we generally don't.
Also, there's this plastic barrier's been put over there for the museum's behalf, right? So nobody touches the things there. Oh yeah, there we go. We're going to launch this baby here. We have a 3-minute program that we do here in the museum, and I know some of you've enjoyed it. It's got sound effects. At 15 seconds, a video comes up, and we launched the last Atlas rocket with this. So there you go, Marty. Now tell us a little more about that, Mac. And we're talking to Mac McDaniel. He is a national treasure in my mind. He was in the delivery room of the birth of the space age, doing stuff like this that now if you watch today's rocket launches, it's all done on a smart tablet and a couple little laptops probably, right? Or you've not been in there to see them probably.
Well,
but
I haven't been in on that, no.
yeah. Well, tell us a little more and I'll shut up and you roll on there. Yeah.
I don't know exactly what to go with here.
Well, okay. Marty wanted just a good shot of that.
Okay.
And this is different ways you were saying for different launches. This would be configured.
All of these sequencers, the MUD 2, 3, and 4, had this similar setup. And if you wanted a particular item to come on at a particular time, you'd had to program it for minus, say, 3 minutes over here and minus 20 seconds over here to turn it on. Then you'd have another time to turn it off. And that's what all these patches did.
Okay.
Also, everything down here was patched into these recorders.
Uh-huh.
So everything was recorded that happened on here. And when the launch was over, these recordings would tell the story. If you had a malfunction of some kind, it'd tell you if anything in here failed or if it worked right.
Well, we had a visitor here named John Borline. Hope he's still around. John Borline was an Atlas pressurization guy. He flipped out when he saw his own machine here in our room on a tour. He lives here. And he told me he would come over here with a protractor, you know, and see where his lines were, that the pressure had stayed the same on the Atlas during the launch. And so this was the data resource for
This
Lucky.
was the data of what was happening in this.
Very important.
That wasn't necessarily what the missile was doing.
Okay,
This only indicated all the times that this was turned on and off,
gotcha.
and if there was any hold fires, it showed exactly when those happened.
On there, okay.
Yes. And if there was any automatic hold fires, it showed when they happened and if they were go or no go when they got into them.
And we're going to see that when we do the launch because it goes through all that. Well, cool. Guy with the keys opening this up. Yeah, I'm still in the visual countdown display. That's interesting
right.
that there's actually a name for that. Well, we wanted to talk about, I wanted to give him a little taste here, Marty, and Mac, talking to Mac McDaniel there. Here is the Blockhouse 36, which Elon Musk has leased. It's right near the lighthouse at the end of the Cape there. You worked in there a few times, I'd say.
Yes.
And this is about half of it, am I correct? It was a full
Well, this
circle.
is the blockhouse. Now there was these consoles.
Good.
Now these consoles came from here. But
Okay.
they had two launch pads. So there was a pad A side and a pad B side.
Oh, okay.
And these consoles here came from the pad A side. The last missile that was
Murphy's right there. We'll say hi to
Murphy's
Murphy.
over in there somewhere.
This
Yeah.
is John Borline with the black goatee. He was amazed to see this. You're sitting at your work desk. Your boss is sitting behind you, and his boss is standing behind him. Always a tense situation, launching rockets,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
And they have such pride in their craft in those days that they had a flag hanging from there that had the missions on there. And I don't know if Marty can swing around, but we've got the flag hanging on the wall over there to Marty's right there. Yeah. Can you swing over there? Yeah, he's got it there. Yeah, this is the actual flag in the pad 35, Atlas-Centaur, Surveyor, 6 missions to the moon, Pioneer to Venus and Mars, Jupiter, Mariner to Mars, and about 400 unmanned satellites. And that was the real meat and bones of the whole operation, was you guys pioneered the communications industry with all these satellites you took up.
Well,
Right?
in
And tell us-
this particular setup,
Uh-huh.
this is the second floor of the blockhouse.
Okay.
We had a Mod 2 sequencer there that was down on the first floor.
Okay.
They generally put us in the basement, kind of back in the corner.
Oh, okay.
That was standard for most.
At least it
of
wasn't the
our-
boiler room. But
Yeah, something like pretty close to it. But anyway, it supplied the countdown for
did you have to
everybody.
wear a tie?
Oh, no. No,
Okay,
no, no. We didn't have no fancy jackets or caps like these people did. But the countdown, of course, was sent out to everyone on the Cape and even sent downrange.
Uh-huh.
The hold fire controls, of course, were tied in here. The test conductor has one light right here. He could stop it. And if the range needed to stop it, of course, these lights here would indicate to us if we had a hold fire and who did it.
Uh-huh.
And but on that particular pad, the sequencer, this sequencer, not this one, but a Mod 2 sequencer, actually only run the cameras around the perimeter. The film cameras, they had film cameras, all the sites around the perimeter, and most of them were taking 400 pictures per second. And they were fixed at a
I'm gonna set
particular
that down.
spot on the missile,
Uh-huh.
so that they would only get pictures of a particular section of the missile, And then if anything went wrong, they had those high-speed film to develop, and the cameras all had what they called a time code on them. You could tell exactly down to the thousandth of a second when those pictures were taken. They that way, if they had one frame of the picture on each side of the missile, they could say, well, these two were taken at exactly the same time. And that's where timing come in. They called us timing and firing. Well, our timing group supplied all those time signals that went on the various recorders and tape recorders and anywhere that they needed timing.
Well, that's I was going to go over here to show, grab a couple things. We'll see you later, Anita. Anita Truex, our unsung office manager, is leaving for the day. See you later.
Nobody upstairs.
Okay, thank you. We're doing Stay Curious, and she's leaving Van Moosen for today. So here's an Atlas 9C. Marty, if I do that, this is a bad day. Destroyed during static fire, largest explosion at the Cape, shockwave felt as far away as Patrick Air Force Base on September 24th, 1959. Was that the one on your first day?
No. That was off of Complex 12.
Is the
Complex 12.
glare okay, Marty? Okay.
If it's the one I'm thinking of, that was the worst explosion they ever had on the Cape, because what
Yeah.
happened when it fired up for the static and it shut down, it ruptured between the liquid oxygen and the kerosene, and they were mixing. While it stood there, it was mixing liquid oxygen and kerosene. Well, that's making a bomb for you right there.
Wow.
And so after it burned a while on the base, it was damaged enough that it fell. And when it hit the ground is when the explosion.
Wow. You felt that shockwave here in this
It tore up
building.
buildings all around the blockhouse. People in the blockhouse were safe because they were in good shape. That probably is it, all right, I imagine.
No, this is the one after John Glenn's launch in
Okay, well-
1962 on February. Scott Carpenter was scheduled to go in May, and they saw this happen in April.
Yeah.
An Atlas. And but you guys, when you see this, one of the amazing things about this, you don't know what I'm going to ask, but one of the amazing things about these explosions, Mac, is hardly ever did the same problem get you twice. Am I correct? Usually you figured out what went wrong, and then that never.
I think they did. You see, I wasn't involved with that part of it.
Right.
No
Okay.
way.
Well, Murphy Boardman talks
Yes,
about
he
that.
was. Yes.
Lee Solid was at Rocketdyne over this, and that was his engines. Who's a board member, the Apollo rocket, Mr. Rocket. And when I showed him, he was looking at this one day. I said, Lee, what do you think about Lee Solid when you see that? And he says, well, that was a bad day, Mark, but we learned from it. And that's always the important thing. You do learn from it, right? Yeah. Well, set those down. We've had a great conversation here with Mac McDaniel. His real name's Homer, but you've been called Mac all your life, have you?
No, just out here at work.
Oh, okay, all right. Are you Homer to your grandkids?
Yeah, I'm called.
All right, okay, Grandpa. Well, and Mac, is there anything I didn't ask you that you wanted to share? We're so grateful for you doing this. He's a wonderful guy, but he's not a person that wants to talk to the public a lot, and we like that. What do you think about this museum? How long have you been involved, and what does it mean to you to see people's eyes light up when they walk in this room?
Well, I don't remember exactly when I started here. It's probably been 3 or 4 years, maybe longer. Time gets away from me before we got this, but it's
So around 2010.
yeah,
2008,
it was before
5 or something, maybe.
Yes,
Okay.
somewhere in that area. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
But anyway, it's an amazing place you've got here. It really is. And
Well, you're a part of it. You're a big part of our team as Marty pans around and has shown you some of this equipment in here. This is one of a kind stuff, folks. This would be in waste management dumpsters and
Yes.
landfills right now,
Yes.
had it not been saved by people like you. And we're going to talk about Murphy Wardman here in a second. You know, I love seeing people's faces light up in this room. We use this, a lot of us docents, as the piece de resistance, the last part of our tour. And it's just got to make you feel good to see them, right? Yeah.
Yep. Well, I'm going to try to keep it working. So far, it's operated for several years and give us less trouble here than when we were operating it on the Cape. We had more troubles with them out there than we have
Oh,
here.
did we?
So,
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Well, you know what? You know the first thing you asked me when we met about 3.5 years ago. Mac asked me, "Aren't you an electrician? I hope." And I said, "Nope, I'm an astronomer." And he goes, "Doggone it! I need someone to teach how to keep this room up to snuff."
I was hoping that some younger person would be interested in learning about this thing, but I haven't found anyone that seems to be interested enough to take time and go into fixing this thing when I'm not able to.
Marty's doing this to himself, so that's
Yeah.
cool. Marty might want to take that. Want to
Okay.
take that on.
Well,
but
that'd be great.
that's how we do. Well, there's a lot to it, and you just changed out half of the room went blank because and you'll see that when we turn the lights out, and you fix the power source on that. You're just a real. He's one of the 10 volunteers we have that have a little niche, and that's what they do, and we're happy that they do that. Like our facilities manager Dan McCune, and IT guy Bruce Jacobs. I mean. You guys all work together to keep this place up to snuff, and we appreciate that. Well, Mac, why don't you start off our 3-minute countdown here? Set the rocket launch going.
Okay.
Oh, have I got
Where did we put the stick?
Oh, I put it over here. There we go. Here's the magic key that I guess you made that, or?
Oh, yes.
Okay. So.
Yes, I made that, and my son worked for a plastic plant. He built these covers
Okay.
so we can keep people from handling all these switches.
What's your son's name?
David.
David. And
Yes.
his daughter Carol is got the sweet voice that does the countdown when you hear that voice coming on. And I'm going to talk for a minute while he activates. We're going to 2 minutes, 56 seconds from now, we're going to launch a rocket. It's going to come on our screen at 15. And I'm going to, in the meantime, we've got this little, let's see. We have a little bit of chatter on here that we play for people. If Marty can pick that up. And Marty, can you see this where the coming out there? And this opens up, and this is your desk where you would throw things in. So you've got that going on. And here's your.
Complexes with sequencers. They supported hundreds of missile launches.
But I'm going to come into that at 30 seconds because I wanted to do a little tribute to Murphy Wardman, who's your
Certainly.
friend. Murphy was the lead electrical engineer and just turned 89 years old. And Mac, you don't stand over here because I'll activate that so he can get us both because I love your reaction. So I found this hat of Murphy's, and I said, I found your hat, but it doesn't have the suspension in it, your hard hat. He goes, Mark, it's not supposed to. I go, Murphy, why? He says, well, you know, we had a lot of delays, and people get upset and waiting on the delays and countdowns and everything. I needed something to break up the people's tension. So I'd walk in with this hat on like this, okay? Yeah. And then they'd put it on another guy's head, who's big head, and someone who's small. And it'd go around the room, and you know, it'd be, so here, you want to be honored to wear
yes.
Murphy's hat there?
Murphy's
he turned
hat.
89 yesterday, man. And this is him or two of the guys I really love at this place. Now we're at 1 minute, 6 seconds. Yeah, Marty? Oh, okay. All right, I'm going to wear the hat here. And we're going to listen to your daughter take us down to the launch.
Countdown is necessary. Directly
Okay.
below the whole fire control panel is the automatic whole fire panel. The automatic whole fire circuitry is monitoring the missile for problems
You,
and will
you got it?
stop the countdown if needed. The white light indicates this item is being checked. The green light is okay. If there is a problem, there will be a
Oops.
red light and the count will start.
That sounds like the
The
Microphone.
function control panel will send the fire calls, other critical missile and launch pad functions, and run high-speed cameras around the missile. Some of these functions are on now. Countdown with me.
Ready to count down, Murphy? Or Mac? Come on.
10,
9, 8, 7, 6, 5.
4.
Thank you, Mac McDaniel, for a great conversation on Stay Curious.
we have ignition. Liftoff. Missile is on its way. The cameras and launch pad functions are being turned off. The plus count will be run from central control for the duration of the missile flight. The sequencer has done its job. You standing by.
You
for the
stay
next
there.
launch.
Go ahead and switch the light on. We're going to switch the light on. We got this rocket off. Hoping to see a Delta Heavy launch tonight. And going to be putting my mask back on. Mac McDaniel, we're so grateful to you for sharing your time and your wonderful stories here. And a happy birthday to Murphy Wardman, he's a little bit ahead of you in his solar orbit, just turned 89. And come and see these guys at our museum. They're here occasionally and telling their stories, and we love to hear them. Mac, is there anything else you'd like to say? That was your daughter, Carol's voice there. We love that.
This launch you just saw was the last launch that these consoles supported. It was the Atlas-Centaur, like you see standing over here.
Okay.
And that was the last launch off of pad 36. And that's the reason they put it up on the video there, because it was the last one supported. I believe it was 2005, if I'm not mistaken,
Okay.
before they shut down Complex 36.
All right. Well, and it's part of a great experience here at the American Space Museum, our proud nonprofit, that we couldn't do things that we do without people like Mac McDaniel. I applaud you, sir, for giving us a great conversation there. And tomorrow I am going to be on vacation, Friday and Monday, and we do have Triple T. We're going to have Tales from the White Room by Triple T. Travis Thompson will have a couple stories about the numbers that you see on the back of the White Room technicians. And not sure who's going to host that, but I've been trying to goad a few of our employees here to help out. Monday, we're going to have space journalist Ken Kramer and Jean Wright here with us. She was she's a seamstress that worked on the shuttle. So 2 good programs Friday and Monday. Marty reminded me, Mac, we're ending our 40th week of being doing this program and helping people stay curious. And that is no small feat, my friend, because couldn't do it without Marty behind the camera and helping me produce this every day, and our whole team here is involved. So we thank you for being here to stay curious. We thank Mac McDonald, and please come back tomorrow with Tales from the White Room from Travis T. And until then, I'm Mark Marquette, and come back tomorrow to bridge the space between us. Thank you.